Hey guys, CJ here. In October at the Hybrid Network, at least for character bios, is Villains Month, and we'll be rolling out 2 of these a week, every Monday and Thursday. Trying to educate you on some of the spookiest characters in comic book history. Certainly some guys whose origins may not be well known, but yeah, we decided to seize the opportunity created by the spooky atmosphere to educate the masses on some characters who definitely fit the Halloween theme. These characters, like today's entry, the Scarecrow, they're some of the spookiest around, but their origins really aren't well known outside the realm of comic book fans, as I just mentioned. And I would hazard a chance at saying that even some folks that are really knowledgeable about comic books and the comic world might not know the full story, especially as some of these guys, they've got backstories that are being rebooted and rewritten constantly. Everyone's got 1,001 origins, like the Joker, for example. And the Scarecrow is no exception. His origin has changed much over the years before being currently reinvented by the New 52. But before we get into it, I just want to say thank you to all of you viewers for bearing with us through this time of uncertainty. We'd really hoped to get the ball rolling on Villains Month last week, but with everything that happened, our attention and efforts were focused elsewhere, especially trying to sort out some organizational stuff with Josh on hiatus, like who's gonna pick up the slack where, that kind of stuff. And with NYCC at the end of the week, that diverted a lot of our attention as well. I will be taking over bios for the time being, so without further ado, let's get started. A lot of people might not know, Scarecrow is one of Batman's oldest villains, premiering in 1941. Only really the Joker, in terms of his popular, rogues, only the Joker really beats him in terms of appearance. The Joker, of course, appearing in his first, issue. But really, the Scarecrow is a guy that's caught a lot of traction, especially in recent years. And some of it, he was in the animated series. He was in Batman Begins. He was also in The Dark Knight Rises. But that's, besides the point. And so a lot of these things have thrust the Scarecrow into the public eye. He's also been in video games, from Arkham Asylum. He's now going to be in Arkham Knight, and he seems like he'll have a prominent role in Arkham Knight as well. So the Scarecrow is definitely a villain, one of the oldest who's been thrust back into the public eye only recently. And as such, a lot of people might be confused as to his origin. And his origin has changed a lot over the years, just like his character has changed a lot over the years, and we'll discuss that a little bit when we get to powers and abilities. But, Scarecrow, he had a widely accepted bio for a long time. It involved a crazy religious grandmother, attacking crows, etc. He was really a sociopath in his older, in his older origin story. He was really, a sociopath from a young age, and it kind of just turned you off. It made you really dislike him. But his New 52 origin, I think, is a lot better, because it makes him a much more sympathetic character. And I think that helps you kind of relate a little bit, and that makes him certainly more interesting. But without further ado, let's just dive right into that. In this origin, he was raised by his father, Dr. Crane. We never get a first name from him. His mother died, and so he was raised by his father, and his father actually worked for the military, I believe, the U.S. government, to create a fear toxin. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Where do you think he got the idea? And part of his experiments, and this is the super unethical part, part of his experiments to try and synthesize the fear toxin was he would lock his son in a basement with dead bodies, scary objects. I can only imagine there was like a ton of spiders down there, because I hate those. Probably a guy in a clown suit with a knife. But he locked him in the basement with all these scary objects, and then he monitored his vital signs, I guess, to kind of see what reactions biologically the fear would cause. And this was not all fine and dandy, but this continued until a day where Dr. Crane locked Jonathan in a basement, and then Dr. Crane died while Jonathan was locked down there. And it was days before the cops showed up and found Dr. Crane dead and Jonathan locked in the basement, as I said. This affected him greatly, of course, as, being locked in a scary room would. And it has shades of like Batman to it with the fear, and that's an interesting relationship that I'll discuss later. But he developed a stutter as a result of this. It was a psychological trauma. It greatly affected him. He was bullied in school. However, he fought past the adversity, which is kind of noble. It would be noble, at least. He fought past the adversity, and he became a psychology professor at a university. And maybe it was a result of his twisted upbringing, but he kind of had some controversial methods. And he was attempting to cure a female student of her arachnophobia, and he threw spiders on her. And this is actually, it's a process, it's technically a process called habituation, which is essentially, the psychological term for confronting your fears and dealing with it by, confrontation and exposure. You essentially get used to it, is the thinking, I would assume. However, this did not fly with the college. I don't think he got approval for it, and he was fired. He then started his own private practice and became a psychologist, but after killing a patient, he decided to take his practice to the streets and practice on others, much like his father had practiced on him, honing the persona that would become the Scarecrow. So definitely a little bit messed up, right? So let's jump to the abilities. And Scarecrow, I will mention the one thing that's very hotly debated about his abilities, and some people might, if you're ever in a comic shop and you take a survey of, what is the Scarecrow as a combatant, you'll get a mixed bag of answers. Because over his illustrious career as a Batman villain, spanning 73 years, he's either been a pretty good hand-to-hand fighter, or he's been, just unintimidating physically. Especially a lot of people will point to Nightfall, where he used a style of fighting that he referred to as crane style. I'm not sure if that was kung fu or not, but he fought John Paul Valley with this crane style technique and was actually a moderate threat. But more often than not, the character is portrayed as sort of a weakling. However, he is very gifted with intellect, and he's actually a master chemist, and that's his primary abilities. He is just a genius with chemistry, and he can create and synthesize this powerful fear toxin, some more powerful than others. And he's constantly creating these fear toxins really, that just essentially do a lot of work for him. He's a psychological threat, as we saw especially in Batman Begins. And, he became the scare beast at one point, and he had immense strength and endurance, and he's able to breathe his powerful fear toxin, but really, by himself, he's unable to feel emotion. That is the big thing for him. He's actually losing his sanity because he doesn't feel fear. And Batman is the only person capable of scaring him. An interesting fun fact for you about the Scarecrow is he actually became the Sinestro of his area, because just because of how well he instilled fear, he would seem like a natural fit for the job, right? But anyways, that about wraps up the abilities. So let's just jump into some of the recommended reading. And especially, you start this list with Batman/Scarecrow #1 and Year 1. Both of those are his pre-New 52 origins, although they give you a good look at just how twisted that character was, especially pre-New 52. But speaking of New 52, the three that you really ought to check out are Batman the Dark Knight, Night Terrors arc, and Batman the Dark Knight Cycle of Violence arc. Cycle of Violence in particular is why I said fear toxins earlier, because he creates like a super fear toxin that is very, potent. He synthesizes it from the sweat of children that have been, exposed to his fear toxin. So it's kind of really, really a little bit, twisted and messed up. And he also features in Death of the Family, which is worth checking out just because it's a great book. He's not the main character there, or even the main villain, but he is, he's there. He's associated. Death of the Family is very good. So it kind of gives you a good sense of his relationship to the other criminals in Gotham, especially the Joker, and a kind of an insight on his relationship with Batman, especially. So yeah, if you want other stuff like him and other medias, definitely go check out Batman Begins. I assume most people have seen it, but also you might want to check out the Arkham games. They kind of have an interesting take on him, especially when Arkham Knight comes out. You might want to check that out because it seems like it's going to do a lot with the Scarecrow. He's certainly going to reemerge. Anyways, I guess before I go, tell me in the comments below, what do you think of Villains Month? Are there any villains in particular that you would like to see? If we've got time at the end of the month, I would try to squeeze in a couple submissions. But regardless, tell me in the comments what you think. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And this is CJ signing off, and I'll see you Thursday.